Shakespeare's Sonnets. Penned during the 1590s amidst a theatrical hiatus prompted by a plague outbreak, the sonnet cycle was ultimately compiled in 1609. Published together in a quarto, these sonnets delve into possible autobiographical themes, dividing their focus between two distinct figures. The initial and more expansive section revolves around an unnamed fair youth, a close male companion of the poet. The subsequent portion shifts its gaze to a dark lady. As a collective narrative, the sonnet sequence weaves a tale of intense bonding, jealousy, heartache upon parting, and elation in shared exquisite moments. The sequence culminates with the Dark Lady's sonnets, concluding on a somber note of anguish and self reproach. Notably, six supplementary sonnets composed by Shakespeare are interwoven into his plays: Romeo and Juliet, Henry V, and Love's Labour's Lost. Additionally, a partial sonnet is discovered within the play Edward III. Dedication. Shakespeare's sonnets bear a dedication to Mr. W.H. The initials T.T. point to the publisher Thomas Thorpe, although Thorpe typically appended dedications only in cases where the author was absent or deceased. Notably, Thorpe's scant body of work comprises merely 4 dedications and 3 prefaces. Speculation has arisen that Thorpe's signature in the dedication, rather than the author's, could imply that he published the work without securing Shakespeare's consent. The identity of Mr. W.H., heralded as the only begetter of Shakespeare's sonnets, remains shrouded in uncertainty. Various hypotheses have emerged concerning his identity. He functioned as the author's patron. He was both a patron and the fair youth mentioned in the sonnets. The concept of the fair youth intersects with Mr. W.H. in some sonnets, but not in others, alongside several alternative conjectures. William Herbert, the Earl of Pembroke, emerges as a plausible candidate for Mr. W.H. and the young man. Notably, he received the dedication of the first folio. Henry Wriothesley, the Earl of Southampton, with reversed initials, has garnered considerable attention as another conceivable contender. He was the dedicatee of Shakespeare's poems Venus and Adonis and The Rape of Lucrece. Southampton was renowned for his striking appearance. Form and structure of the sonnets. The sonnets predominantly adhere to a structure comprising 3 quatrains, each consisting of 4-line stanzas, succeeded by a concluding couplet. These sonnets are crafted in iambic pentameter, mirroring the meter employed in Shakespeare's theatrical works. The rhyme pattern adheres to A B A B, C D C D, E F E F, G G. This configuration designates them as Shakespearean sonnets, English sonnets, or Elizabethan sonnets. Typically, a pivotal shift, known as the volta, transpires at the end of the 3rd quatrain, altering the poem's tone and introducing a new line of thought. A few deviations exist: Sonnets 99, 126, and 145. Sonnet 99 spans 15 lines. Sonnet 126 features 6 couplets and 2 blank lines marked with italicized brackets. Sonnet 145 adopts iambic tetrameters rather than pentameters. In another variant seen in Sonnet 29, the rhyme scheme is altered by reusing the second rhyme of the first quatrain as the second rhyme of the third quatrain. Beyond rhyme, focusing solely on the arrangement of ideas and the placement of the volta, certain sonnets retain the bifurcated structure of the Italian sonnet. In such cases, octave and sestet denote the initial 8 lines and the ensuing 6 lines respectively. Shakespeare exhibits further inventive line groupings, reflecting his creativity within the framework of these 14-line compositions. Characters of the sonnets. Fair youth. The fair youth, featured in sonnets 1 to 126, remains an anonymous young man cherished by the devoted poet. Handsome and self-absorbed, he captures universal admiration. The sequence commences with the poet's encouragement for him to marry and procreate. The bond deepens, evoking homoerotic undertones. However, betrayals surface as the dark lady lures him, causing turmoil for the poet. Ultimately, the poet's own act of betrayal concludes their association, marking his emancipation. Dark Lady. Sonnets 127 to 152 comprise a defiant sequence challenging norms. The dark lady, named for her dark hair and dun skin, contrasts starkly with the fair youth. Engaging in a sexual relationship with the poet, her demeanor is far from aristocratic or chaste. The relationship parallels Touchstone's pursuit of Audrey in As You Like It. Celebrated crudely, the Dark Lady becomes a vessel of male desire. While speculation surrounds her identity, she ultimately elicits the poet's rebuke for ensnaring his fair friend in Sonnet 133. The triangular dynamic unravels, culminating in the poet's rejection. Rival poet. The identity of the rival poet remains shrouded. Candidates include Francis Davison, John Davies of Hereford, Samuel Daniel, George Chapman, Christopher Marlowe, and Ben Jonson. The rival poet's praise of beauty, akin to Shakespeare's patron Pembroke, sparks intrigue. Clues within the sonnets hint at these contenders, perpetuating the enigmatic nature of his persona. Famous sonnets by William Shakespeare. Shakespeare published 154 sonnets, and although they are all poems of the highest quality, some have entered deeply into the consciousness of our culture to become the most famous Shakespearean sonnets. This handful of sonnets are quoted regularly by people at all modern Western life levels, sometimes without even realizing that they are quoting a line from Shakespeare. Sonnet 18. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Sonnet 18, perhaps the most renowned, captures Shakespeare's address to a close young companion. Shakespeare's self perception and humility remain uncertain. He asserts the timelessness of his verse, suggesting his poetry's enduring nature. The poem extols the young man's beauty while affirming the permanence of the sonnet's portrayal. Structure of the sonnet. Sonnet 18 conforms to the Shakespearean sonnet structure, comprising 14 lines of iambic pentameter. 3 quatrains precede a final couplet, maintaining the ABAB, CD, EF, rhyme pattern. Rooted in the Italian sonnet tradition, it showcases Shakespeare's mastery. The speaker contemplates comparing the youth to a summer's day, but asserts the youth's superiority. Unlike fleeting summer qualities, the youth's splendor will not fade. Instead, the sonnet preserves the youth's essence eternally. The irony emerges. While the young man's depiction endures, the poem immortalizes the vivid details of a summer day, allowing the youth to transcend temporal bounds. Sonnet 33. Full many a glorious morning have I seen. This sonnet belongs to the Fair Youth sequence, a collection of poems expressing the poet's affection for a young man. Sonnet 33 initiates the theme of estrangement, addressing the poet's reaction to a vague sensual fault by the beloved, explored further in Sonnet 35. Sonnet 33 adheres to the Shakespearean sonnet framework, comprising 3 quatrains followed by a concluding couplet. Its ABAB, CD, EF, rhyme scheme is characteristic of the form. Iambic pentameter, a 5-pair rhythmic pattern, underlies its composition. The sonnet reflects on loss, specifically the absence of a cherished one. Shakespeare contrasts the emotional contrast between radiant mornings and clouded skies, paralleling the beloved's prior affection and current detachment. The beloved's past love resembled a luminous morning, while the loss feels akin to a somber day. The poet refrains from blaming the beloved, acknowledging human frailty as intrinsic to nature, much like passing clouds. Sonnet 73. That time of year thou mayest in me behold. This sonnet delves into the theme of aging, addressing the fair youth. Through 3 metaphors, autumn, twilight, and dying embers, it conveys the poet's impending old age and offers perspectives for the young man to perceive him. Sonnet 73 also adheres to the English or Shakespearean sonnet structure, featuring 3 quatrains followed by a concluding rhyming couplet. Sonnet 73's narrator contemplates mortality, likening his stage of life to autumn's fading beauty. He compares himself to a tree branch devoid of birds and leaves, a day transitioning to night, and the dimming embers of a once fiery blaze. These symbols reflect the gradual decline of his youth and vitality. The speaker imparts the wisdom that one must cherish life intensely, recognizing its fleeting nature. Sonnet 104. To me, fair friend, you never can be old. It is a member of the Fair Youth sequence in which the poet expresses his love towards a young man. Sonnet 104 also is an English or Shakespearean sonnet. The English sonnet has three quatrains followed by a final rhyming couplet. It is composed in iambic pentameter, a poetic meter based on five pairs of metrically weak or strong syllabic positions. Summary of the sonnet. The youth does not seem to have grown older in the 3 years that the poet has known him. Still, age comes on gradually. If so, future ages will have to know that beauty died before future ages were born. This sonnet deals with the destructive force of time as we grow older. The poet uses his friend as an example. He admires that his friend has kept his youthful appearance over the time that he has known him. Sonnet 116. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Sonnet 116 is one of Shakespeare's most famous love sonnets, but some scholars have argued the theme has been misunderstood. Hilton Landry believes that the appreciation of 116 as a celebration of true love is mistaken, in part because its context as a sequence of adjacent sonnets is not properly considered. The poet in this sonnet begins by stating he does not object to the marriage of true minds, but maintains that love is not true if it changes with time. True love should be constant, regardless of difficulties. In the seventh line, the poet makes a nautical reference, alluding to love as the North Star to sailors. True love is, like the polar star, ever fixed. Love is not time's fool, though physical beauty is altered by it. The movement of 116, like its tone, is careful, controlled, and laborious. It defines and redefines its subject in each quatrain, becoming increasingly vulnerable. It starts as motionless and distant, remote and independent, then it moves to be less remote, more tangible and earthbound. The final couplet brings a sense of coming back down to earth. Ideal love is maintained as unchanging throughout the sonnet. Shakespeare concludes in the final couplet that he is either correct in his estimation of love or that no man has ever truly loved. Sonnet 129. The expense of spirit in a waste of shame. It is considered one of the dark lady sonnets. Sonnet 129 is an interesting take on the imperative force of lust but its ultimate shallowness. Everyone knows how shallow and guilt-producing lust is, but few men can avoid it. Shakespeare shows how lust brings out the worst in people and the extremes they will go to, and then he explains the guilt that follows the satisfaction of one's lust. Sonnet 129 is an English or Shakespearean sonnet with three quatrains followed by a final rhyming couplet. Sonnet 129 considers the emotional experience of the act of physical love as it progresses in time. First, the anticipation of lust, then the consummation, followed by the complete shift in the mood of the aftermath. The sonnet in spirit resembles a passionate, dramatic monologue and seems to be expressed by a man who looks back at such an act of love with bitter fury at its contrasting aspects. The sonnet begins with a howl of disgust. The poet condemns the experience, listing negative aspects of lust in anticipation. It can cause a man to be dishonest, brutal, shameful, savage, and cruel. The moment lust is satisfied, it is despised the way a fish might despise the bait it has swallowed. The poem ends with a couplet pointing out that though all men are aware that love in action may provide pleasure, it ends with deep wretchedness, but still they cannot resist. This sonnet is one of the most impersonal in that only one other sonnet in the quarto collection excludes the characters of both the poet and the subject, which in this case would be the dark lady. Sonnet 130. My mistress's eyes are nothing like the sun. William Shakespeare's Sonnet 130 mocks the conventions of the showy and flowery courtly sonnets in its realistic portrayal of his mistress. Shakespeare expresses the kind of love that has nothing to do with the beloved's looks. He satirizes the usual way of expressing love for a woman, praising her lips and hair, the way she walks, and all the things that a young man may rave about when he thinks about his beloved. What he does is invert those things, assert that his beloved is ugly, ungainly, bad smelling, etc., but ends by saying that his love for her is as rare as that of any young man who writes flatteringly about the object of his love.